Azure provides many different services for us to build our solution. But one of the critical things when building solution is cost. We need to understand the cost of the solution that we are building before committing to it. And for that, we need to understand how costing works in Azure and what kind of tools we have in Azure to predict the cost and also keep an eye on the cost that are incurred on a day-by-day basis. So let's first start with how the cost of Azure is seen from the business side. On the business side, we can classify cost into two types. One is called capital expenditure and the other one is called operational expenditure. So if you're building your own infrastructure by building a data center and buying a servers and everything, then that cost will be counted as capital expenditure because you are buying a capital assets for your business. So the cost of that will be considered as capital expenditure. And in most countries, for capital expenditure of a business, there won't be any tax breaks. On the other hand, we have something called operational expenditure. So these are the expenditure that the business incurs on a day by day just for running the business. So these type of cost is classified as operational expenditure. And when you are actually using resources from Azure, the cost of those resources will be counted as operational expenditure. So one simple analogy for this is capital expenditure is like buying a house and operational expenditure is like renting a house. When the cost is classified as operational expenditure, usually in most countries you'll get tax break. Okay, so that is the advantage of operational expenditure. Now, in Azure itself, let's see what are all the factors that will affect the cost. So the first one is resource type. Obviously, not all resources will cost the same. So if you're using a virtual machine, that will have different cost. And if you're using storage account, for example, then that will have different cost. So the resource type matters. And also the geographical location matters as well, because if the server is in US, for example, then that might have different cost than the one which is in Europe, because we have different electricity price, labor cost and everything, right? So the price of the resource will change depending on the geographical location as well. And also one additional cost associated with the geography is the bandwidth. And this bandwidth is associated to data that are coming in and going out of Azure. For most of the services, data which are coming into the Azure will not be charged. But the data which is going out of Azure will be charged depending on how much data we have transferred. And this cost is also changing from geography to geography because of various operational cost. Okay. Then the next factor is subscription type. So if you are using pay-as-you-go subscription, for example, then the cost that you pay will be different from someone who has different subscription at a corporate level. Okay, because of the commitment and engagement between Microsoft and that business, the cost of the subscription will be different. And the other factor is billing model. So there are three major billing model for most of the resources within Azure. And the first one is called consumption based. And in this model, you only pay for what you use. So if you have, created a storage account and you have only used 1 gigabyte of storage, then you'll only pay for that. And if your storage consumption increases, then you'll pay more. If it decreases, then you'll pay less. So that is the consumption based billing model. Then we also have something called standard. So this is actually applicable for resources like virtual machine, for example. You'll be paying a fixed cost for that virtual machine, no matter whether you are using it on a day-to-day basis or not. Because that machine is allocated to you, you'll be paying a fixed cost for that particular machine. And another one which is linked to standard is called reserved. So this is where you'll be getting a resource at a discounted price because you made a commitment to Microsoft that you are going to use that resource for fixed period of time. Usually that is from 1 to 3 years. So if you say that you are going to use the virtual machine for next 3 years, then rather than getting a standard price, which will be slightly expensive, you'll be getting a discounted price because of the commitment that you make. So that is actually reserved price. Then one of the other factor that will affect cost is marketplace. So if you are using some solution from marketplace that are built by third parties, then in addition to the actual resource usage that are incurred by that solution, you will also pay some additional fee to that third party because they made that solution available to you for profit, right? So because of that, the cost will be different. So these are some of the factors that affects the cost. Now, for estimating the cost, we have two different tools in Azure. One is called pricing calculator and another one is called total cost of ownership calculator. Let's first briefly see what these two are. Then I'll show you the actual page in which you can go and calculate these. So the first one is called pricing calculator. So pricing calculator is where you'll be able to select different resources that you want to use for your solution and you'll be getting the estimated cost. Okay, so this estimation is just an estimation, so it will not be accurate. It could change, but this will give you a rough idea of how much you're going to pay for the solution that you're going to build using Azure. Okay, so that is what a pricing calculator is. The other one is called total cost of ownership calculator. This is useful to compare what kind of cost benefits you will get if you migrate from on-premises infrastructure to Azure. So you'll be specifying your on-premises infrastructure specification. Then, Azure will be able to show you if these things are moved into Azure cloud, what kind of cost benefits you will get. So that is what this total cost of ownership calculator is. Okay. Now I'm just going to quickly show you what this pricing calculator and total cost of ownership calculator looks like. So this is the pricing calculator from Azure. If you just Google Azure pricing calculator, you will be able to find this link. And in here, if you see, you'll be able to select different resources that are offered by Azure and you'll be able to see the cost of it. So I'm just going to pick, say, for example, virtual machine. Now, if I go in here, I'll be able to specify various properties and parameters for this virtual machine. Then it will show me the actual cost. So for this particular virtual machine with these parameters, it is going to cost me approximately $138 a month. So this is what a pricing calculator. So basically you'll be able to add multiple resources and you'll be able to see how much it will cost you in total on a monthly basis. And again, like I said previously, this is not 100% accurate. This will give you a rough idea of how much it is going to cost you. Okay. So that is what the pricing calculator is. And the other one that we have is total cost of ownership. Again, if you just Google Azure total cost of ownership calculator, you'll be able to find this link. And in here, you'll be able to add your on-premises infrastructure. Then Azure will show you what kind of benefits or cost benefits that you will get if these are moved into Azure cloud. Okay, so that is pricing calculator and total cost of ownership. Okay, now with the pricing calculator and total cost of ownership calculator, we'll be able to estimate the cost, right? Now, how do we keep an eye on the actual cost incurred by our solution? Okay, so for that, within Azure, we have a blade called cost management. And if you go into that blade, you'll be able to check the current cost of the resources that you are using. And in there, you'll also be able to create alerts based on cost. And in there, you can also create something called budget. And when you create a budget, you'll also create alert based on that budget. So whenever the cost exceeds that budget, you'll be alerted by an email or other mechanisms. In an advanced scenario, what you could also do is you could use that alert to automatically suspend the services that is exceeding the budget. Okay, so that is also possible using some automated solution. And one of the other important thing within cost management blade is something called cost analysis. So I have a screenshot for cost analysis here. So if you see here, this is actually cost management blade. And within this blade, we have cost analysis. And in here, you'll be able to see the cost of different resources for this particular billing period. So you'll be able to drill into this and see the different cost of different resources. This will be very useful to understand where the cost is going. And one of the things that you can do is you can use tags. When you create resources, you'll be able to add different tags to those resources. So these tags will help you to group those resources outside of the traditional grouping that we have. So we have things like management group, subscription, and resource group to group resources. But if you want to group a resource outside of those things for billing and other management reasons, then you'll be able to, use tags, and those tags can also be used in the cost analysis. For example, you can have a tag for particular cost code, and you can actually tag all different resources that belongs to that cost code with the same cost code tag. Then you can actually come to the cost analysis section and you can filter the resources by that particular tag to see the total cost incurred for that particular cost code. Okay, so there are various different analysis that you can do in cost analysis section using tags. So tag is very useful feature when it comes to cost analysis. Okay, so that is basically a whistle stop tour of cost management within Azure, and I hope this is useful. Thank you.